So, final thoughts on the game. My final take. Breaking it down, running it down, let's see what we think. It's definitely a different take on a Final Fantasy game, isn't it? It definitely feels like something that is of a different scale. Kind of, it reminds me, it always reminded me a lot of Final Fantasy IV in terms of scale, where it's like this massive epic story. But just like Final Fantasy IV, and just like some of the number of things in the game, I can't help but feel like there's something that ends up missing. Pieces of a puzzle that I don't have all of the bits to. And I know this might be a codex problem, because I do know that with every bestiary entry, there's two entries. There's one that's just about the animal, and the second one, which just has lore. Sometimes it's lore tied to that animal, and sometimes it's just completely random one. Like you could be getting a wolf, and then if you kill 20 wolves, then you unlock a codex entry for an airship. I don't know. Like the Alexander, I know, has a whole entry and stuff, and it's just tied to some random monster, and you only get it if you kill enough of that monster. Which is tricky. Yeah, Gideon Emery! Um, is that little Ash with a chocobo? That's adorable. But, and so maybe the answers lie in there. Maybe that's where I need to go to. Maybe on my 100% completion, I'll dive into it. And then maybe sometime I'll sit down before or after another stream, and we'll talk a little bit about what I found out if I dive into all the codex stuff and see if it answers some of my questions. But the connections between the Acuria and the Empire and the history of the world, it just feels like there's a lot of pieces missing. Like, it feels like there's something, but I just don't know the whole story. Like, why was Vane so hung up on subjugating and destroying Dalmasca to help his goal of freedom from the Empire, or freedom from the old ways and the old gods? Like, I understood the Acuria as part of their plot. Like, they're trying to manipulate people into doing what they want so they can stay in control of everything. Dear God, Al Cid, you have a lot of girls. Um, but I don't quite get how the whole we need to destroy Dalmasca or subjugate Dalmasca ties into that end goal. I feel like there was some pieces of the Empire side of the story that were missing or skipped over or I missed somehow. Really, I found the whole Acuria plot to be the most interesting part. And I'm really kind of curious now that they have defeated, now that you've destroyed the stones and supposedly the Acuria are, no longer hold control over the world, how this is going to tie into tactics. Because I know all those espers come back, and I know they're tied to the Zodiac stones, which I do know is auracite, which has some relation to nethicite. And I'm wondering if it's tied into Giruvegan, which that whole crystal down there is still intact. It's still sitting there. It's not the sun crystal, but it is something, right? It wasn't destroyed. So I feel like there's definitely some more stuff going on, and I feel like I really want to, and that's one of the reasons I'm really going to dig into those codex entries now that I kind of have got an idea of what the plot is, and I can go back and like try and find the pieces that are missing for me. From what I gather, the world was one way. The Acuria came, enslaved the world essentially by using stones and everything to like bribe them and tame the mortal races into doing what they want, since they have the benefit of being undying. They are immortal. Oh, look, it's baby Balthier. But immortal, so they have the sight to weather through any sort of thing. Like, oh man, you don't want it? I'll just wait till the next one comes around. They can do that. They think that's essentially where proper history starts, because that's when they brought order. At this point, at some point, Vana decided to rebel against them. I don't know if this is the same rebellion that created the Espers, or a different rebellion. But Vana brought the secrets of how to create Nethicite to people so they could essentially unshackle themselves from the Ocuria. Why Vana did this, we don't know. Why Vane decided to do it the way he did it, I don't know. Strangely enough, for all of it, the only person whose motivations made any sense on the Imperial side of things was, like, Sid. Just weird, because he's kind of insane. So that's my take on the plot. I just feel like there's pieces missing, and that might be about on my end. That might not be a game problem. So I'm willing to concede the fact that there's a lot of story in the game that's held in parts of the game I haven't read yet, because it's all written down in the codexes and the bestiary and stuff like that. That said, moving on. What about other aspects of the game? Well, I feel that gameplay wise is a mixed bag. I love the Gambit system. I love the idea of that level of customization and control and being able to pick and choose and build kind of templates for how I want the battles to flow using the Gambits. On the other hand, what that essentially makes it do is turn every major battle, one where there's either more than 3 enemies or a boss who has a health pool bigger than anything that you could possibly imagine, into just sit there and wait for the fight to end kind of scenario. Which is, I don't know whether I could sit there and say if it's something I would like or dislike, or sometimes it feels like a fun thing. At the same time, at others, it feels like, what am I even doing? Like, why? Especially on the bigger boss fights where there's just so much HP and you're just sitting there going, like, you've got your gambits set up and you don't need to be here. I've done that. I've said that before with Yasmat. I've gotten up and went and made dinner while waiting for that fight to conclude. And at that point, what is the point of giving monsters that much health? Really? No, seriously. What is the point of giving monsters that much health that the fights are going to drag on that long that you can just program them in and then walk away and then it doesn't matter? It's one of those things where it just becomes either a slog if you sit through it, or becomes so irrelevantly pointless it just feels like, why? Why are the fights that stacked? Like, the only thing you really have to worry for is whenever they do a super move. And then, I mean, even then, you saw, I mean, I was able to Curaja my way back up from that using, like, double Curajas. Boom. Full health again. Moving on. Like, we didn't even get everyone to 50. before the final fight, and yeah, I can't really say I struggled. Except, honestly, Gabranth was the hardest one because he would do like 10 hit combos and drop you from full health to nothing in the time that it took to fight, in like seconds. That was the worst, honestly. Characters. I know the joke is that Vaughn has no point in this game. And I don't necessarily think that's true. I don't think he's the most useful or prominent character. I think he serves his role as a POV character fairly well. There are times when he tries to shove himself like, I'm important too, guys. A few times that get on my nerves. And it does get on my nerves when he does that. Because he's not that important in the grand scale of things. His whole relationship with his brother it gives him a slight reason to relate to Ash in terms of wanting revenge. But why is he able to see, like, why are the Akuria letting him see Wrastler too? Is it because Wrastler sort of looks like Rex? Like, is there some sort of parallel there? I did not understand that for the life of me. Why could Vaughn see Wrastler? Especially when it's revealed that Wrastler is nothing more than an illusion created by the Akuria. Even less reason that Vaughn should be able to see it. Why is the Akuria letting him see that? The rest of the cast, that said, he's not the most pointless character. In terms of story, the most pointless character is Penelo. Her whole reason for being there is because Vaughn is there. I mean, really, she has a short-lived, like, friendship with Larsa, which doesn't really need to be part of the story. It doesn't really do anything. She doesn't serve too much as a bridge. I mean, Larsa pretty much endears himself to everybody except for Balthier, who knows who he is right from the get-go. But everybody kind of liked Larsa. You didn't need, like... There was never a moment where it's like, everybody else is like, yeah, we're going to get you, Larsa. Oh, you're a traitor, Larsa. Oh, you're with the Empire. We'll use him as bait. And then Penelo would be like, no, he's a good guy. I trust him. Like, the worst he does is Larsa kidnaps Penelo, essentially, at one point, and runs off with her, so Vaughn has another reason to chase after them. That's it. Not that they wouldn't be doing that anyway. So Penelo really is the most pointless character. Really. She's there to balance out the male-female ratio, I guess. Because otherwise, it's like you don't have a young female character, the equivalent of Vaughn. Whereas you have Fran and Balthier, and then Bosch and Ash, who has, kind of similar parallel loyalties and levels of, like, roles in the story kind of thing. That said, I do understand that Vaughn is a POV character. That isn't to say that Vaughn is the protagonist of this story. The protagonist is very much Ash. And I need to bring that up because that's something that I've seen a lot of people contend. And I don't blame people for making this mix up, because generally 99.9% of the time, if someone is the protagonist, they're also the POV character. Or they're the main character and the protagonist. They don't necessarily have to be the same thing. A main character is the character we follow. That is our POV character, if you will, our main character, the character we're with most of the time. That is Vaughn. The protagonist, however, has a unique role is the protagonist serves to move the plot forward. The plot and the plot moves when the protagonist does things. And the antagonist serves to thwart the protagonist. No one is trying to stop Vaughn. Like, Vaughn Short is a protagonist in the very early steps of the game before Ash is introduced properly. He moves the plot forward up until you steal the goddess magicite shard thing. And again, I'm not clear on the difference between magicite and nethicite, auricite. I need to do some wiki diving on some of this stuff, apparently. I was keeping myself off the wiki where I could because I didn't want any spoilers for the game. I also didn't want to break the rules of our race. Beyond that, Balthier, Fran, awesome, fun characters. Bosch and Ash, interesting, dynamic characters who, quite honestly, are very... have a lot of depth. Like I said, I was very much of the mindset that I didn't have a firm, clear grasp on what Ash should decide when she got to the Suncrist. There was a lot of valid arguments to be had both sides, really. And if I was in that position, I couldn't necessarily say I would be 100% on board with knowing which one I should do. Just that aspect alone, and that duality of trying to decide whether you're for avenging everything you cared about being destroyed, or for a potential future where humanity has freedom from gods you didn't know existed until recently, even though that aligns with the goals of the people who destroyed everything you cared about. Because that's the other twist there, is the fact is, like, you can sit there and say, yes, not working with the Akuria is clearly the correct choice, but that puts you in the same bag as the Empire and what the Empire is doing. And they're the ones who screwed everything up to begin with. So what do you decide here? I don't know. So I get a lot of respect for that. Same with Bosch. Bosch is a guy who's stuck with the idea of the fact is, like, what does honor mean? Which is a plot point that really resonates with me, because I have always been a fan of Chris Metzen's novella that he wrote for World of Warcraft about Tyrion Forgering and his description of honor, which is he tells his son before he is set to be tried and executed for aiding an orc because the orc was injured and he believed as a paladin that, you know, he may be an enemy, but he's an injured enemy that's no threat to anyone. Yes, I'm going to help him. And so he tells his son is that our words and deeds must count for something in this world. Which is always just a sentiment that always resonated in me. The matters of honor and that sort of thing really kind of resonate with me. It's like, Bosch has been branded a traitor. He's been branded a Kingslayer. And yet he knows he didn't do it. So instead of, like, what should I do and stuff like that, or, you know, the world has, you know, turned its back on me, why do I have to stick out for them? You see that plot point a lot in a lot of other media, where it's just kind of like, the world abandoned me, why should I save the world? Bosch, on the other hand, says, I am a man of honor. I am loyal to my oath. I stand for king and country. This is my queen. This is my country. I serve them. They may hate me, but I still serve them. which is kind of cool. I like that. I'm very curious where this whole thing is going in terms of how it ties to tactics. Right? I know that there's a 500-year gap between this and tactics. I know that there's a cataclysm that pretty much changes the entire setting. All technology and most of the non-human races were all eliminated in this cataclysm that happens between this and tactics. And I know the order, roughly because of that, is tactics, or no, 12, Revenant Wings, Tactics Advance, Tactics Advance 2, Cataclysm, Tactics. Are we going to play those three in the middle? I don't know. I don't. I maybe at some point. Maybe further down the line we'll come back to them. Revenant Wings would take a lot to get hooked up and set up and find a way to play. Again, that's why I originally made it a tip goal. Was because if we succeed in that, you know, it's like I'm going to have to take extra time that I would not have to normally for any other game in this series to set it up. Originally, that is why Tactics was on that list before the re-release. Like, they just re-released it this fall. So, yeah, we're playing Tactics next. Because that's easy to do. I can hook that up no problem. I can put it back in the order. Not an issue. But some of these take a little bit more time. And I'm not 100% great at tactical RPGs either. I mean, I'll admit that. You'll see. I was good at them back when Shining Force was a thing, back on the Sega Genesis. I played those, but... Yeah, I like this game, but I feel at the moment, without finding out more about the lore, possibly digging into it a little bit more, I feel like it's not quite there yet. And I know that's a problem we're going to be running into. When we get to 13, you will see the ultimate end problem of a problem that starts with 10, which is the idea of narrative focus versus establishing lore. The story of the history of Yevon and of Zanarkand and Bavel in 10 starts a path that leads to this, where you have very little information about the actual goings-ons about the plot and what's behind the scenes and how things got to where they are and who are the actual players in the story. The ultimate end problem of that leads into 13, where you are, as I have put it before, trying to find out what happened at Helm's Deep when all you can do is follow Frodo and Sam. That is the best explanation I have for like how 13's story problem. And I love 13. I will gush about 13, but I will also admit that it has problems. Me liking something and something being excellent quality do not have to be equal in measure. Some of my favorite movies are garbage. But I love them because there's something in there that resonates with me. Either enjoy or find something fascinating about it. Like, I love nowadays that people love this. For me, it was Tuesday's Speech by Bison in the Street Fighter movie. The original 1995 one. 94? Don't remember exact what year. But I love and I love the fact that people are appreciating that now, because I have been singing that thing's praises for like a decade and a half, talking about how much I love that one scene, just, and that Bison's character just in general, it's like, but that, for me, it was Tuesday's speech belongs in a list of the greatest villain speeches of all time. Because there is such an epitome there of giving you what Bison is about, how Bison thinks, what his priorities are. That you understand him as a villain in its totality in this one little speech that he does. It is so well crafted and delivered with such brilliance by Raul Julia that I can only jump in joy that other people are now recognizing it for how good it is. And I feel that way about 13. I also feel in the minority because I'm sitting there like, I'm also the person that sits there and goes, I love 7 as a game. I absolutely hate the story because as I put it on Blue Sky. The problem there is the story, even if the story itself is the best written thing in the history of the Final Fantasy franchise, the way it is relayed to the player automatically nullifies any good in the story. Because essentially, by the time you convey everything to the player, it makes no sense. It doesn't work. Players are confused. To this day, people are confused about what is what. I see pictures of videos on TikTok and YouTube Shorts constantly about who was actually in charge, Jenova or Sephiroth. It's a valid debate to be had because the game does not clarify on this. Was it Sephiroth? Probably. But why did Sephiroth's priorities change so radically once he fell into the live stream with Jenova? Suddenly his priorities have shifted to be a lot more in line with dear old mom's plans. What's up with that? Is that Jenova's influence? Is that Sephiroth coming to a realization? Don't know. And that's my part. That's the reason I actually really enjoy the remake, is it's making those things a lot clearer. It's actually doing a real good job of explaining things on a number of levels so you can follow what's going on. And I'm really looking forward to part 3. We will, as part of this series, play all of the remakes. We're just waiting for the third one. Because then we'll do them back to back to back. Honestly, the plot problems like I'm describing here probably won't be resolved in this franchise until Final Fantasy 16. 16 fixes a lot of this. 16 goes out of their way to make sure that you know what's going on in the plot, what happened here, what happened there, all this stuff. And it's one of the reasons I was really excited about this remake of Tactics that we're going to be playing next, because a lot of the features that made 16 so easy to follow have been brought into Tactics since it was the same team that worked on them. So a lot of those, the chronicles, the following the timelines and who controls what territories and everything like that, that made 16 very easy to follow in terms of world big scale events that affect the little nitty gritty events, have been brought over to Tactics. So that's why we're looking forward to that. That said, that's a wrap on 12. Revenant Wings, tip goal. Advance 1 and 2 probably also will be added as a tip goal eventually. Tactics, no longer a tip goal, will be played next.